Hello, welcome to Thursdays with Cassidy. Here at Ask Dr. Callahan, we do a Thursday edition of Facebook Live with me, where I talk with you guys about a hot topic from our customers. We talk a lot with people who are taking our courses. They ask us lots of things, and we use this opportunity to answer those questions for some of you who may have the same questions, but maybe didn't email them, but you're still sitting there going, I wonder about this. And so today we're going to do a little different spin on that, because today we're going to cover an idea that I want you guys to think about. It is an opportunity to explore the concept of grading and what would happen if maybe we didn't have them. It's an interesting thought, right? Yeah, so let's take a look. Today I'm going to tell you about what do we know about academics and the very idea of giving grades. Have you ever thought about it? You're sitting down and you're putting this course together, and I bet for a lot of you, you just kind of assume that grades are part of what you include, right? They do an assignment, and the way you tell them they've done good or bad is to give them a grade, right? Do you have any idea why? No, it's probably because you went through school and did it that way, and someone told you this is the way that things were done, right? So what would happen if maybe we didn't do that? There was an article that came out recently in Money Magazine where a researcher had followed 81 valedictorians from graduation out into their professional careers. And something like 90% of them, no, it was 60%. 60% of them went on to get graduate degrees. 40% of them went on to get professional careers. But less than 20% of valedictorians went on to achieve anything of a high level of significance. And none of them went on to become the next Steve Jobs or the next owner of Facebook or the next SpaceX. None of them went on to create anything of that level of significance. And so they started asking the question, why is this? Why do these students that performed so well academically, why are they not going ahead and achieving these things? And so they started looking at, well, what is the grade average of today's millionaires? And do you know, the collective average GPA of today's millionaires, on average, today's millionaires had a GPA in high school of 2.9. Let that sink in for a minute. And do you know why? Because in school, you're asked to be good at everything, right? Your GPA is determined by whether or not you got an A in all of your subjects. That's math, history, science, reading, geography, PE. You're asked to have a very well-rounded education and to get good grades in all of these subjects. And as anyone who is very, very good at something will tell you, it's difficult to be very, very good at a lot of things. It's easy to be mediocre at a lot of things, but it's not easy to be good at lots of things. And for students that have the propensity to be excellent at something, who have a passion and a focus, the traditional academic environment can actually be very stifling. It can be really hard to get a good letter grade. And as a math tutor, I completely understand this conundrum, because one of the things that I'm called in for when local schools, and this is private schools, public schools, homeschool cooperatives, lots of arenas will call me up. And the one thing they usually call me up about are students who are failing. And they're the ones who have this horrible grade in math. And by the way, these students are also usually the ones that have horrible grades in math, have really great grades in one of the other subjects, from history, science, art. There's usually one other subject they're stellar at, and they're failing in the math class. And the parents will often assume that this student's not good at math. Oh, they're getting bad grades in math because they're not good at math. I'm here to suggest to you, from my experience, usually those students who get the bad marks are actually really good at math. What they're not good at is arbitrary actions. They get very, very frustrated with doing things that make no sense, that have no context, that serve no purpose. And math, the way that we typically educate, that's what it is. It's you memorize facts, you spit them back out on a test. And if you compare the way we teach math to the way science or history or other subjects are typically taught, you have things like field trips. You have things like projects and activities, and you contextualize the subject in real life, and they all have purpose and a function. With math, you memorize and you spit out on a test. You memorize and you spit out on a test. And this is what happens in math tutoring class, right? We'll sit down and I'm working with a student. 90% of what I teach these kids is how to pass a test. You know, oh, well, when you're giving this answer, you have to write it out in this particular format, and you have to be sure to write your units. And your teacher's probably going to want to see these 3 things, so make sure that you put that on there as well. And don't forget this step, because that's going to count for half a point. And 90% of what we do to raise a student's grade in math as a math tutor, a lot of times, now for some students it's conceptual and you have to go back and do some other things, but for a lot of them, it's about teaching them to take a test, which is why I want to point out something, that academics doesn't typically let you focus on what you're good at. It doesn't let you focus on what you're passionate about, and it certainly doesn't teach you to function in the real world. Now, think about this with me. When did anyone, as an adult in your life, when did anyone ever give you an A for how well you loaded the dishwasher? Probably not. What about when you turned in your taxes on time? Did it come back to you with a sticker on the front that said 100%, way to go? No. No. And was there some kind of ceremony with a special outfit and special music, and all your family came out with flowers and a great certificate to tell you, to celebrate this promotion that you got at work? Probably not, right? And why is that? Because in real life, those things aren't real. Grades and a 100% and a special, sticker for doing well is just not what happens. And grades in general are entirely arbitrary. And some school systems are actually picking up on this. In 2015, Kentucky actually changed the way that their public school system actually does the grading, and they don't have grades in Kentucky now. They have a well-defined set of course objectives, and the students have to demonstrate mastery in those course objectives in some other way besides grading. So this is not just my idea. This is a concept that's catching on in lots of places. And we talk about math, and people get frustrated with math a lot. I hear this all the time. Math has no application to my real life. And I think that's mainly an argument that people have because they were never taught the application of math to the real life stuff. And I think the grading and the test taking and the way math is so compartmentalized down to memorize the concept, take the test, get an A, move on, don't stop to think about what you're doing. That format has definitely impacted the reality that students don't understand where math functions in the real world. But in a more broader sense, the entire grading system of high school is only loosely associated with actual intelligence anyway. And we know this kind of intrinsically because, like, when I took the ACT for the very first time in, oh gosh, I was in like 6th grade. It was a big to-do. And I took it and I made an 18. And then I went and studied and studied and studied and studied. And a couple of years later, I took it again and I made a 27. Took it again, made 1 point higher. And you go back and you do this, right? You take it and you don't get the grade you want, and you go back and you study and you study and you study, and then you make a higher grade. You're not actually any more intelligent the third time you take it and raise your grade by 5-6 points, but you've mastered the process of the test better. So you made a higher grade, but you weren't any more intelligent than you were before. So when you made it the first time and you got a 22, you were just as intelligent as when you took it again and made a 31. You just got better at taking the test. And that's why I'm saying a lot of times exams are not the best judge of how well you know something. And in high school math especially, they're not necessarily the best judge of how well you know math. And I think it's an interesting concept to think about, and it's why I'm bringing it up at today's Facebook Live with Cassidy, is because I think we say that we want to educate our students to be lifelong learners. We say we want to give them a foundation for their future, and the very system we're housing their education in has no basis in actual reality or what it looks like to be a functional adult. The way that we teach them to judge whether they did a good job or not. On what basis are you deciding, I did this well? I learned what I was supposed to. I learned what I wanted to. I got what I was after. We don't ask those questions. We ask, did you check all the boxes? Did you get all of the points? And I think research has shown that students who perform well academically don't always go on to achieve anything very innovative or very high achieving. And I think we say, you know, I want them to be smart. I want them to be independent. I want them to explore, to discover, and change the world someday. But I think when we say I want them to be lifelong learners, we don't actually mean I want them to be forever a college student. But when we focus on academics instead of on learning, that's what we're teaching them. And, you know, with each of our kids, they have passions and they have interests that God gave them. And when we tell them not to focus on what they're interested in because they need to get good grades, we're asking them to learn facts, regurgitate it onto paper, and then calling that knowing something, which of course it isn't. That's not intelligence, that's mental slavery. As homeschool parents, we have the freedom to educate our kids in the best way possible. And I think that perhaps we should rethink the grading system. Now, I know that for a lot of states, you have to turn in your grades. So I'm not suggesting that you don't grade them. I'm suggesting that maybe you take it out of their equation. Like, what would happen if we just didn't tell our students that they got a grade on a particular assignment? What if we judged them on whether or not they could demonstrate mastery of that lesson's concept? Can you show me that you know what this is and how it's used and that you can do it correctly? I think it would really change things. And if you think about school, school has very clear rules, but life doesn't. And when there's no clear path to follow, high achievers will break down. And we have to start looking at what kind of humans we want our children to become, because right now, the grading system that we have and the way that we typically approach math doesn't give them that lasting foundation for their future. We want to teach them to learn, to explore, investigate, and grow as people in a way that does translate into their real life. So there you are. There's some education strategies that you can use. If you have questions about what it might look practically to take grades off the table, you can contact me. I have some ideas of stuff that I've used with some of my students before that might help you, but it's definitely some interesting thoughts. Look down below this live video. We do have a comment section on this video, and I would love for you guys to tell me what you think. What do you think would happen if we took grades out of the equation for a math class? Tell me below, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.